As many of you know, this week we celebrate International Coaching Week and the transformational power of coaching to change lives, cultures, and communities. Today we'll be talking about the power of coaching in organizations. And before I introduce our guest speaker, a little housekeeping. If you hold an ICF credential, this program qualifies for 1 resource development credit. To get that credit, you need to complete the survey at the end of the program to receive your CCEU certificate. The first code word is celebrate. This word is necessary. Please put that in the survey to get your CCEU as confirmation that you completed the program. And I will give a second code word at the end of the program. Working tech for us today is Catherine Alsip. There's Catherine. She'll be monitoring the chat box and posting links for you. If you have any questions during the program for our panelists or for us, please put those questions in the chat box and we will do our best to get to those. And without further ado, I would like to introduce our special guest, Renee Robertson. Renee is Vice President of ICF Coaching in Organizations, a new business unit dedicated to the advancement of coaching in organizations. Welcome, Renee.
Hi, Stacy. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I am just going to share my screen quickly. Let's see. How's that? Can you see my slides?
We see all of your slides.
How about now? Do you only see one slide?
We see your notes, your slides, and your notes.
Oh, that shouldn't be that way. I apologize. Hang on 1 second. This is why we practiced this before, and
Renee, it'll be the same thing you did earlier where you just swap the view. Yep, just swap the view.
Thank you. Okay. This might help. I put my glasses on.
And while we're waiting for Renee, if you want to put in the chat box where in the world you are joining us from, we would love to hear your location. Oh, there we see your slides, Renee.
You see them? Okay,
yes.
Thank you, everyone. Sorry about that. So let's try this again. Thank you so much for having me and welcome, as Stacy said. I'm so happy to be here with each of you. This is a topic near and dear to my heart and just delighted to spend a few minutes with you all. So what I thought I would do is just share some data from an HCI ICF study that was done about 2 years ago around what I refer to as the business case for coaching in organizations. And the data that you'll see today can also be located on the ICF website and the links included. And at the end of the presentation, I'll make sure you have a copy of this and you can refer back to it. Sound good? Just give me a thumbs up or okay. Fabulous. All right, so let's just talk about the data to start out with. There were about 400 business leaders, HR, L&D leaders that were surveyed around coaching in organizations. And I think one of the greatest findings that came out of the survey was the correlation between organizations that deployed and utilized coaching to their performance level in terms of how they performed in their sector and in their industry. So clearly there is this alignment between high performing organizations and coaching that uses organizations that use coaching. And a couple of the areas that sort of support that finding are that these organizations also tend to have strong employer brands. So the employment brand is very strong, which creates the ability to attract key talent. They also demonstrated high performer retention and just general talent retention overall remained high, as well as the organizations that deployed coaching. We also saw higher levels of senior leader bench strength. So replacement candidacy and sort of, if you think of a bench in terms of a sports or in succession planning, the depth of the talent was much stronger. Moving right along, these organizations also invested heavily in their coaches and the development of their coaches. Some of the top three, or I would say the top three areas that these organizations said that they focused on for their coaches was practice supervision. So for coaches that were working inside the organization, they had the opportunity to be supervised or observed and then given feedback. They were also provided with resources and tools and templates to use with the folks that they coached inside the organization. And they also continued to invest in specific coach training. So you start to sort of see this this analogy or this correlation forming, hopefully, between the organization using coaching, the investment in their coaches, right? Sort of building the case or the business case, as if you will, for coaching in organizations. The next piece of data, which I thought was interesting, is 25% of these organizations call out coaching as a line item in their budget. Okay, so they have a specific line item in their L&D or their training budget allocated to coaching. And on average, these organizations were spending about 21% of their total training budget on coaching initiatives. So again, investing in the area of coaching, and therefore investing in their talent, and therefore investing in the performance of their organization. So for many of you that are coaches, you might want to ask yourself, so what is it that these organizations are looking for when they hire coaches? 54% were looking for previous coaching experience. 48% indicated that they wanted to see their coaches have some type of credential or certification in coaching. And then 34% wanted to see knowledge of the organization's industry or their sector. So some type of, base knowledge of business, that not necessarily that particular organization, but familiarity with industry. And then in terms of sourcing coaches, they were asked, so how do you find a coach? Where do you go? So 38% indicated that they like to get referrals from trusted individuals or folks in their network. 29% went to existing consulting firms that they have a relationship with and asked them if they have coaching or can they recommend other organizations or individuals that coach. And then 26% train their own coaches internally. So they're looking at their own internal talent and they're saying, okay, who might be a good candidate, or sometimes in many cases, individuals will just raise their hand and say, this is something I'm interested in, and I'd like to see integrated into an organization or their department, and it sort of rises up from there. Then another interesting piece is what types of coaches, right? And how are they using coaches? So 60% of the participants said they lean on external coaches to deliver coaching. 57% indicated that they lean on internal coaches. So coaches that are full-time employed within the organization. And then 82% said they're really working on teaching their managers, their leaders, coaching skills and capabilities so that they can have more meaningful conversations and perhaps have conversations that take more of a coach like approach. And that just helps further sort of embed coaching into the organization. And then in terms of the reasons why they're using coaching and how coaching is being deployed, 55% are using it for leadership development, right? So we saw that earlier in terms of the senior leader bench strength. 51% are saying, we're using it for talent development overall. Again, seeing that in terms of talent retention, employment brand, ensuring that they have good, strong bench candidates for succession planning. And then 49% are saying they're using it for performance management. And I know even when I say the words performance management, I think everyone gets a little, it doesn't always come with a positive connotation. But what's very interesting about how performance management is used in this context is it's about having more of a coach-like conversation with employees, and it's more about the employee and their development, not necessarily a performance or a remediation type concern. So I think that's very important to draw that distinction here. So that's just a snippet. There's lots of data in that report. There are a few other reports that were conducted around coaching cultures, managers coach, coaching for change that you can find at this website out on coachingfederation.org. I will share this with all of you. And before I transition over, I will just take 2 minutes to share a little bit about CIO. Because it is a very new organization for us. Just very quickly, and you can start to connect the dots. If you see how organizations are using and growing coaching and embedding it sort of in many of the things that they do day to day, you know, from an ICF perspective, it says, well, you know what, it's a time to perhaps create a membership for organizations. So in the last 25 years, ICF has really offered one type of membership, and that's for the individual. And now we have 2 types of membership. So at CIO, this is a place where organizations can join and enroll HR professionals, OD professionals. It's not just for coaches. It's anyone who wants to learn and grow or further embed their coaching initiatives within their organization. And the purpose of CIO is not just to offer this membership, but sort of why do we exist? It's really about leading the global advancement of coaching in organizations. And if you're on this call, many of you know the power of coaching and the impact it can have in systems, in relationships, in communities, and to further it in organizations is an incredible opportunity, and quite frankly, something I've been passionate about, and I'll just say for many years. I'm not going to say anything more than that. And with that said, really, what we are doing is sort of focused in this area, and I just want to take a moment. We announced CIO last January. I joined in March. We've spent the good part of 2020 really operationalizing the business unit. I mean, it's a startup for all intents and purposes. We had to design products, services, infrastructure, and all these wonderful things in order to build a community and or a place where these organizations can gather and help also inform us in terms of what are the standards that organizations are looking for. So for as much as ICF is putting out credentialing and standards and our code of ethics and things like that, we're also collaborating with organizations to understand what's on their horizon, what are their expectations, and how can ICF and coaches and coaching be positioned for the future and in support of these organizations. So how do we do that? You'll see in a couple things we're working on is looking at the standards in organizations for coaching, educating organizations as well as coaches. We're working on some research. We do best practice sharing, offering up some thought leadership, and at the end of the day, really forming a community for all of us that are passionate in this space and want to further advance coaching in organizations to sort of commune, share, and grow together. So I know that was very quick, but I know we're on a tight time schedule. So I just want to say thank you. And you can put any questions in the chat. I'm happy to answer them. here's my email address. You can always drop me an email too. So thank you. With that, Stacy, I will transition back to you.
All right. Thank you, Renee. Yes, we have a couple questions already that came in about the source of the data. What companies participated in this? Where are they from? Are they Fortune 500? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So there were, I want to say 366 companies represented. I don't know the specific stat. A good portion of them were North American based, so from the Americas. And they varied in size from medium to large to global. So it really encompassed a good wide breadth of different companies.
All right, thank you. And we had a comment come in from Rich. Is anyone else horrified that only 54% of companies look for previous experience as a selection criteria? Renee, do you have some thoughts on that?
It's interesting. It sort of took me a little by surprise too. And, you know, it's a great question, Rich. And I wonder, I have two points, and I'd like to go, I wish I could go call these people specifically, but I can't because they were anonymous. However, I can't help but think two things. One, the correlation between internal coaching, and if remember, there were 57% were using internal coaches. So then they just were thinking, well, yeah, of course, I want someone from my industry. So that's sort of my immediate reaction to it. But I also think sometimes when a consumer doesn't know or isn't as informed about coaching, they may have this assumption in their mind that it's sort of like perhaps consulting, or they feel more comfortable because, oh, they understand my business, and they're just not as familiar with coaching and the process and the approach. I hope that helps.
Yeah, and Diane commented that coaching is not a regulated industry. And so there's, you know, there are these lines between mentoring and advising and coaching.
Yes, great point.
All right, well, let's get to our panel. Our panelists, I'm sure, are anxious to weigh in on these topics, so I will introduce them now. First up, we have Phyllis Collins. Phyllis is the founder and managing principal of the Collins Network, a performance consulting, coaching, and training organization specializing in personal, professional, and business growth. She has a passion for developing high potential employees, emerging leaders, and new executives by coaching them to lead where they are while staying focused on their bigger purpose in life. Phyllis holds a CPA certificate, is an ACC credentialed coach, and a member of the esteemed coach team at the Kansas Leadership Center. Welcome, Phyllis.
Hi everyone.
Next up, we have Marie Payne. Marie is an organizational development consultant and leadership coach at Children's Mercy Hospital in Kansas City. She founded the Leadership Coaching Collective, an internal coaching bench of ICF credentialed coaches to support the internal coaching needs at Children's Mercy. Most of her clients are clinicians, physicians, and nursing leaders who are tasked with leading the transformation and arduous changes in their organization. She also teaches coaching at Avila University and is a lifelong coaching student herself. Hello and welcome, Marie. Next, we have Rich Drinon, and Rich is, oh, there he is on camera now. He got his COVID shot yesterday and is having the fever that comes along sometimes with that. And so if he goes off video, that is why. Rich is president of Drinon Associates, a business-to-business coaching firm. He's been providing leadership communication coaching to executives and management teams since 1988. He's an ICF PCC with a master's in leadership communication from Gonzaga University. He holds a leadership coaching certificate from Avila University. He's centered in Kansas City, Missouri, and currently provides individual coaching to 110 clients a month from 6 organizations around the United States. Welcome, Rich. And Last but not least on our panel is Renee. Renee Robertson is going to join us. She is a veteran corporate executive who has led global sales, marketing, human resources, and talent management organizations. She serves as a trusted advisor and coach to senior leadership and relies on her coach training and capabilities to engage organizations to thrive and achieve results. While at Verizon and MCI, she designed innovative coaching programs that were recognized by ICF as International Prism Award winners. She went on to found Trilogy Development, a learning, coaching, and consulting firm, and is author of the book, The Coaching Solution: How to Drive Talent Development, Organizational Change, and Business Results. All right, well, let's get to, so welcome to all of you. Let's get to the process, how we're going to go Zags, Eric says. Let's get to the process here. So we have our 4 panelists. I will present a question to 2 panelists to begin with, and then after that, all questions will be open to all panelists to engage in and answer. And if you do have any questions for the panelists, please put that question in the chat box and we will get to that. Our questions will fall into 4 general categories: the what of coaching, and specifically coaching in organizations; the why, or more specifically, the outcomes and return on investment; best practices; and the future. All right, so let's get started. First question will go to Marie and Renee. How do you describe what you do to those who may not be familiar with professional coaching? Marie?
Sure, yeah. So I am an internal coach, as your bio about me described. I'm an internal coach at Children's Mercy Hospital, and I start by just telling people that I'm a leadership coach. And when they ask what that means, I like to say that through coaching that we help our leaders maximize their individual potential and their leadership effectiveness. We have some internal sources that we use to go a little bit deeper, and I'm happy to go into those if the time is right, Stacy, but I'll let Renee share as well, I guess.
Yeah, oh, thank you. Yeah, I would say very similar, depending on the audience. Sometimes it's leadership coach, executive coach, depends on who I'm speaking with. But I would say very similar to Marie about, I work with individuals and organizations to drive their effectiveness as well as business impact.
Okay, and for Rich and Phyllis, as external coaches, how do you engage organizations or clients within organizations initially to broach that coaching contract conversation?
Would you like me to go first?
Sure. Rich, thank you.
Okay. Normally, or at least in the beginning, it was all cold calls on businesses to introduce myself, ask for an opportunity to speak, and then work towards getting those clients or those prospects as clients. So year 1, I think, was about 1,000 contacts with people I did not know. Over time, as I've gained more clients, of course, that's led to more referrals. But I do push myself to continually meet people, new people that don't know me, because I'm hardcore. And I think that's the essence of being a great salesperson, is being able to meet and influence and persuade people to do business with you that never knew a thing about you.
And I would say that mine is a little bit different from an external coach in that I've never gone searching for clients one-on-one. What I have done is I look for clients that are looking for coaches. So I tend to meet up with either HR professionals or somebody inside, or training professionals that are already, they have an audience and they are looking for coaches. Mm-hmm. And so those audiences tend to know what coaching is. So I don't have to explain it to them, but once I'm inside an organization, I tend to have to follow up and explain what coaching is to the actual client. And normally I just always set aside, after being selected, a good half hour to just have a let's have a conversation about coaching. What questions do you have? Why do you think you're here? Here's what I offer. Here's how we work. And their biggest question is always, but what do I bring to you? Because they don't really have that concept down. So I just always give them some things to consider, but it's mainly just pay attention to what's going on over the next week or two before we meet, and just tell me what worked well, what didn't work well, what would you like to do better? So I come at it a little bit different in that I go to a different audience to actually sell or talk about coaching.
Mm-hmm. And so Phyllis, we have a question from Diane. How do you identify companies looking for coaches?
And this is another different thing. One was already an existing client for me. I came into coaching mainly through the training route. So I was a contract trainer. And so I would go to organizations and do training. And again, they did not have their own training group. I would be their trainer. After being in there for a while, and this is when I started getting into training, I just offered up coaching as another opportunity for learning and development. And so I, again, just went straight to my contacts and explained that to them. Now, there's a funny story behind that we won't go into right now. But after that, then it just became, and this was about 10 years ago or so, when it was fairly new, I think fairly new in the Kansas City area. And then as organizations started looking for coaches, I got involved with the Kansas Leadership Center. And they were, quite frankly, looking for trainers. Saw that I had a coaching background. I ended up on their coach team. And that exposed me to a lot of people. And I would say it is more, one of the percentages I saw earlier, it is by referral. So most of it is still by referral.
Okay, thank you for all of that information, Phyllis. So question to all of our panelists, what do organizations in your experience care about most when they're looking for a coach?
Well, for mine, they're looking for an end result that would be generally their team members of their leadership team or management team communicating with each other more effectively, so they have greater team synergy. And that's the strength that I bring to the table. And along with that, their ability to communicate with their employees to achieve results through them or up the ladder with those they answer to. So really a full spectrum of better leadership communication overall. That's what my clients are looking for.
Stacy, I can't answer the question specifically because I am an internal coach, but I can, so it's not so much what the organizations are looking for, but I can say what our clients are hoping to, those are coachees or clients that are searching for coaching. And the outcomes that we promote in my organization through our coaching collective is really an enhanced self-awareness and emotional intelligence. It's improved relationships, increased ability to mobilize others, increased ability to challenge assumptions, to explore new possibilities and lead change. Right now, we're going through a huge transformation. So leading change is really important right now as well.
And how do you, and Phyllis, jump in here, and I'll add a question onto that. So how do you, Marie, Rich, Renee, Phyllis, how do you measure your outcomes as a coach?
And I would say one of the things that I was always asked to do from a coaching standpoint are working with reluctant leaders. Because of my accounting background, a lot of people hone in on that technical side, even though I haven't done accounting for years. But they are financial people, engineers, IT type people. They are very, very good at their jobs and have been asked to step into leadership or at least apply, and they are very hesitant. And so they bring in the coaches to try and help them really go through that whole, what is leadership to them? What does it look like? How can they bring their best self to that leadership position? So one of the outcomes then is basically, is that achieved? Have we prepared those emerging leaders that have been tapped or identified? Have they begun to move willingly into the leadership ranks? And then do they stay? So that would be one. I again, as an external coach, don't always see the numbers, but I anecdotally see the people who are still there that are now into the leadership positions and have actually gone higher and higher within the organization.
I would say we measure it a couple different ways. First and foremost, it's meeting or achieving the goals that the individual client has set for the coaching relationship. Next, it would be just in dialogue, just like all coaches, we close out our sessions, individual sessions and a collective of sessions around asking for feedback and, hoping that we get some quality information that way about how the coaching engagement or partnership went. We, of course, take what we've already kind of talked about a little bit, but referrals as a measure of success. If they're referring their peers, their friends, their colleagues, that obviously means that something great is happening in those relationships. And then finally, so our program is, I would say we're out of our infancy stage. We're moving into slightly more advanced program, but we have launched a survey for those who have engaged in a particular number of sessions or more. We've done surveys with them after they've completed that number of sessions to get some more quantitative data around did we meet their individual needs? We have a set of collections or questions around that. And then of course, around the organizational alignment and achieving goals and behaviors and that kind of thing. So looking at it several different ways.
And so Maria, follow-up question. I'll come back to you, Renee. A follow-up question from Becca. Are your clients within your organization, do they self-select into these coaching services or
Yes.
are they chosen?
No, almost all are self-selecting. Our coaching program is a development opportunity. They come on their own free will. We do not do performance coaching. It's all leadership talent development. We have a flyer and we have an intranet site where they can go to learn more about what coaching is and what coaching is not, read bios about our coaches. We have 10, some of which are on the call. So shout out to my LCC colleagues that are on here today. But then from there, clients can choose to do what we call a discovery session to meet with one or several of our internal coaches to really have a deeper dialogue around what coaching is it right for them? What do they hope to achieve through that coaching relationship? And really then to determine whether that coach is a right fit for them or not. So yes, it's all self-selection on the client's end.
With the clients that I work in, they've all been tapped in some way for the most part. They've been tapped as a high potential employee or an emerging leader. So they've been tapped into either a training program or into a coaching program. And then once they are there, they're normally more than just myself as a coach. And so we also then set up the chemistry calls and the meet and greets. And then they get to select from that point on. They normally talk to one anywhere from 2 to 3 people, and then they select that coach from that point on. I did work with one client where I was the only coach. And that was the one that I also had a very long-term relationship with. So that did not seem to present a problem.
My teams tend to decide as a group, usually the senior team first, that they want to participate in coaching with me. So that would be round 1. When that goes well, we go to round 2 with the next level of leaders, and then round 3 and round 4. I think I'm into round 5 with 1 or 2 clients. So after the first group, people are selected. The sponsoring company makes it appealing, or maybe appealing isn't the best word, but it's an honor to be selected rather than a penalty. Everybody that I work with is really good at what they do anyway, so it's just a matter of helping them get better. So they are assigned to be a part of the coaching group for the year. And most of them are on board from the start. If they're not, then of course my skill has to include getting people on board quickly who may be resistant to coaching, which I've been able to do well. But if a client has 15, 20, or 30 managers that they're going to put in coaching with me, the law of averages would suggest there are going to be 1 or 2 that are somewhat reluctant, hesitant, or just in the dark on what it means to them. So I'll have to take it from there. But to answer your question, pretty much the sponsoring company is assigning those people to be in coaching with me.
And how do you, and this is for all of you, how do you navigate the potential ethical or confidentiality dilemmas between working with your particular person and the hiring manager or the hiring organization?
I issue my confidentiality statement to the company or the sponsor when they are in the contract, and then that's shared with each individual, and it's made clear what is confidential versus what I am allowed to share with the sponsoring representatives. And there are certain parts of my coaching that are confidential and some parts that are not, so those are clarified up front. I can tell you when you do, with leadership communication, which of course is all about communication, relationships, and mutual influence, having that number of people from one organization, one has to be incredibly careful not to overstep any of those boundaries, or as I would like to say, step in it, which would be, the case. So that's how I set things up with sponsors and participants.
All of our coaching sessions are confidential. We do have an agreement that we use, that all of our coaches use internally, and it addresses some of the things that would require us to maybe breach that confidentiality, which is obviously the interests of, or in the event that they were to mention that they were going to harm others or themselves. And then, of course, if there's any mention of employment law type issues, things that we would want to engage an employee relations representative with, we would, of course, encourage them to partner with the correct people for those types of conversations. But other than that, all of our coaching sessions are confidential. There is no communication between the client and their manager from the coach per se. There's, of course, encouragement for the client to have communication about the development they're having in their sessions with their supervisor, but the coach does not engage in that, at least not without the client present. So.
And I would say very similar with my experience in that first having that conversation with the sponsoring organization to let them know what's in that coaching contract with the emphasis on the confidentiality aspect, and then showing that again to the actual coachee. So they read it. They tend to not ever be worried. At least my experience, they've not been that worried about it. But I always make sure that they understand what that means, especially if there are other people involved, or if they see me in the building, I make sure that they know that I don't tell anybody why I'm in the building or who I'm talking to that day. So they understand that. I have had some, I would say very few, but when it has happened where it seems like the manager wants to know, because from time to time we will do a session with the coach, the coachee, and the manager on the front end just to establish expectations as far as what would the manager like to see. Now that doesn't always mean we work on it, but we always get their input. There have been some times where, not sometimes, I always recommend to my coachee, I encourage them to discuss things with their manager. I've only had maybe 2 times in 7 years where the manager wants to talk to me, and I always direct them back to the coachee. But when I have done it, I've always let them know that basically it's going to be a sharing where I'm just present while the two of them talk, and I might coach the two of them with questions between the two of them, if that makes any sense. So it's not like me reporting back to the manager.
Mm-hmm. Renee?
Yeah, I'd just like to add on to that, because I've seen this done a few different ways. Yes, yes, and yes to almost everything everyone has shared so far. But around this, the confidentiality piece, yes, to if they're going to harm themselves or others, they seem to agree with that. Yes, it's in an agreement that's in place, so they can understand that. And also, I like to share, I like to talk about the code of, if you're an ICF credentialed coach, I always take that opportunity to talk about our code of ethics and what that means and share that with them. And then when setting up coaching engagement, so very much to your point about having that kickoff conversation, right? Also managing the customer's expectation, or the sponsor, if you will, or the manager's expectation, that there will be a midpoint check-in or an end of wrap-up, and it is incumbent upon the client or the coachee, the employee, to provide the feedback. And Phyllis, to your point, we're there in support of them, right? So that always seems to work well. And I hear that pretty consistently with organizations as well.
So let's switch gears a little bit to expertise. Most of you came into coaching being an expert at something else. How does that expertise, that previous expertise, play into the coaching that you do now?
I feel fortunate that when I started my business in 1988, it was focused on communication skills. And I think I was one of the early trainers and coaches to bring a camera into the classroom and work with individuals one-on-one, or in group settings and then one-on-one. So that began my, individual coaching at that time. This is 9 years before ICF is conceived. So coaching's been looked at, of course, a number of ways over the years. But then later, continued communication coach, and then the master's degree later, and then the coaching credentials. So really the core of what I do, the communication over time, has just always been there. And it contributes to being a leadership communication coach. That is my differentiating factor. Some of you won't like what I'm going to say next, but I believe that everybody and their dog these days thinks they're a leadership coach, and sometimes the dogs are better. You may not find that amusing, but I do. I think people just, announce themselves as coaches when they have really no background or no training to do so. But that's part of our free market here in the US. So I like to differentiate myself by saying, I bring 34 years of leadership coaching, speaking, and training to the table, and that ties into what you need from me as a leader. So I don't necessarily promote myself as a leadership coach per se. There are plenty of those around. I'm more specifically geared towards one aspect of that.
Rich, if I can just tag on quickly, Stacy, to what Rich just shared. There's an interesting statistic in the 2020 ICF Global study that was recently released, and the coaches responded that 49% of coaches responded that they see how can I say this? Everyone calling themselves a coach, but not necessarily a coach. That is one of the greatest challenges that they experience in the marketplace today. Just a little fact behind that.
Renee, did they mention the dogs that I mentioned?
No, the dogs weren't you couldn't check a box for dogs,
Yeah.
but it was an other box, Rich. So
I can tell you my English Shepherd was a herd dog, and I'm sure he was pretty good at getting people where they needed to go. So, all right.
And just to piggyback on that, with the following behind coaches that are not coaches, I'm not even coming from that from a judgmental standpoint. They begin to tell you what they did in those coaching sessions. And for example, we've had coaches before. We meet with them once or twice a year and we talk. You're like, uh-oh. And then they'll say things like, we go out for lunch and we have like a 3-hour conversation. It's like, uh-oh. So they start to describe what this other coaching was. And so that's how you start to know, oh, then what we're about to do is not going to be the same as that. So that is the challenge, to explain what that difference is. And they enjoyed and they got something out of those other encounters, but it's just not the same as what coaching is. So I would agree on that barrier. The other thing, people, again, I mentioned this before, they will see that accounting background before they see anything else, before they ever see the coaching certification or anything. But it's not so much that they are looking for an accountant. I think it's they are looking for, and even when I am selected as a coach, they will talk about, you seem to have a technical background, or they'll say, you know, I've heard many people say to me, you will know how to talk to them, or you will understand how I talk. And so that's why they select me. But then what I also bring is my talent development background that I also had before I became a coach. And that helps me to bring in that adaptive leadership skill. And so again, I work with a lot of people who are somewhat reluctant or very strong technically and just not strong at all on the leadership side. And so, and they sense that it's like, okay, you came from a technical background and have somehow mastered this leadership. Maybe you can help me. So they see that in my background.
So let's move on. We had a question come in about many of you are published. What impact does that have on your clients? The fact that you have publications. And while you're contemplating that question, Terry says it sounds like a technical background of some sort can be used to create trust. Any comments on how effective having publications and being out there in the public sphere affects your client's willingness to hire you?
It's had none on mine.
Okay.
I'm not published either, and I don't know that it has or has not impacted me, but I have plenty of clients and I am busy every day.
Okay.
That's what I could say.
I would just echo what Marie said. I am not published yet. But yeah, to my knowledge, it has not had any impact in any way. I would suspect that it could be helpful in getting attention for sure, though.
I think one thing too, just to add to that, because I've certainly been published in magazines and in books numerous times, it just never has really contributed in any obvious way. But what I've also noticed too is I use social media extensively, LinkedIn and Facebook for marketing. I don't get a lot of likes, but as Marie said, I'm booked fully. I couldn't take any more customers this year if I had to. So, you know, regardless of what people may see reflected on social media, well, he only has 3 people that like that post, poor him, you know, well, at the same time, it's not really an issue. But I think there's some value, of course, in, you know, having marketing and visibility. I just think sometimes it's hard to know what that value is.
Renee, did you have something? Oh, sorry, Marie.
Oh, I was just going to say, so not published, but, you know, as an internal coach, I think that we gain, and maybe kind of along the lines of what Terry said in the chat, is that we gain some street cred, if you will, inside the organization based on our involvement and our, you know, our clients referring us that way. So not necessarily published, but there is a, you know, when people know you and can share the work that you've done, that goes a long way. So to your question earlier, Stacy, for me, I've been with our organization for 13 years. So that historical organizational knowledge helps me and might give me some of that, what I called street cred, for lack of better word or language earlier. I work in a healthcare organization, and I was also a respiratory therapist for 10 years. So I have that clinical knowledge. So for our clinical leaders who are looking for a coach, they often pick me or my fellow colleagues who are nurses or physicians as their coach because of that knowledge. So if they're looking for that, you know, similarly in industry experience, we have that as well. And then lastly, I would say that my experience as a change practitioner, I'm a certified change practitioner, that also goes well with what the transformation that our organization is going through to be able to help them navigate change that way. So.
Renee, did you have something to?
Yeah, I would say perhaps a little bit. And what I would say is my work in coaching over the years in organizations, and then, you know, really the impetus behind writing my book, which is an enormous amount of work for all of those who just it's just beware. Blog post is a lot easier. It was more about putting all of what I had learned out there to make coaching, for those that didn't understand how to use it in the organization or wanted to use it or how to implement it or how to work in an organization, to really put it out there. So it was more of a pay it forward, I guess, or like, I don't know what the right term is. I just to really put it out there and share. I think it's helped. It helped definitely when I came to interview for this job, which I never thought. I've been a member for 20 some years, but didn't know I'd actually be working at ICF. But I would say it has benefited in some way. I don't think I could put a financial amount to it, but I think it has benefited.
And so for those coaches out there who maybe are new coaches, or maybe they're new to the idea of working in an organization or for an organization, if each of you could give your top two and really, really quick top two pieces of advice for them. Let's start with Phyllis. Put you on the spot there, Phyllis.
Can I pass for right now?
You can pass for right now. Rich,
but
how about you?
Come back.
Okay. Top two pieces of advice for new coaches or coaches just starting out in organizations.
Well, certainly be cognizant of who the players are and who is an ally versus a potential adversary, and with the thought of how to get those adversaries on board with you. That would be the one main thing that comes to mind. You know, there's a playing field in an organization. You've been invited in to play on that field, and yet there's a lot of dynamics you have to be aware of.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That's fine. If you just want to give one, that'll give us four all around. Phyllis, are you ready?
Well, one would be, and this is going to sound like a commercial, but truly network within ICF Heartland. Because when I look back at the clients that I have had, some way, somehow, there was a connection that you could say a name, or they were the one who actually referred me. So I would say make use of ICF Heartland and or just your network in general who knows about you.
I'm going to share two, because I'm going to go from the lens of an internal coach, someone who's if you are trying to grow an internal practice, and have a coaching bench inside your organization, I wanted to say two things. One is be prepared for growth. When we, it started with just three of us. I think they're both on the call. Robin and Eric and myself started coaching in our organization. And once we started advertising, it exploded. Like I said, now we have 10 coaches, and all are very busy in our organization. So be prepared for growth. And be prepared to sustain that. If you're going to offer it, you got to be able to fulfill the requests. And then the second one I would say is build a community. So everyone within our coaching collective at Children's Mercy is connected to a community or communities outside of our internal community, whether that be other programs, WBEX, programs they went through, KLC, Berkeley, whatever program they trained in, some type of community that way. But also we have built an internal community of practice, and we connect bi-monthly. In fact, we had a connection this morning as well, where we share practices, resources, tools, and grow together that way.
Renee, what's your piece of advice?
Wow, I was there with Rich. I was definitely there with Marie. And I would say if you're in an organization, two things. One, be a performer, be cognizant of your brand, because people will look to you also for how you have performed in previous roles sometimes. So just be aware of that. And I would also say coaching is becoming such a key competency in every role, that just continue to invest in your development and practice.
And final question. We have time for maybe one more. What What's the future of coaching in organizations? What do you see on the horizon over the next 10 years?
I see what Renee just said. More and more people will begin to use the coaching skill set as part of their not bag of tricks, but their skill sets, and that more and more of it will be done by individuals and organizations that may or may not be, quote, professional coaches.
I would say, Stacy, if you took a look at the mega trends right now in terms of movement of the populations, in terms of digital transformation, in terms of gig economy, and a couple of the others, and look at how they translate into meta skills that are going to be required in the workforce. And we talked about, I've heard Marie, we talked about emotional intelligence, there's innovation, creativity, imagination, just to name a few. When you start to think about that, couple that with this pandemic that we're hopefully emerging from, we've all adapted very differently. And going back to work is not going to be the way it was. And organizations are now, the employer value proposition that I had referred to earlier is now becoming the employee value proposition. So worker demands are becoming a mega trend, and the employee or the worker is sort of at the heart of it. So when you think about that and you think about coaching, I see many applications for coaching out there, especially in organizations. I see it growing in terms of wellness coaches, life coaching, not just leadership and executive and organizational, the change piece, Maria alluded to change earlier, the competency piece, Rich has alluded to that targeted communicating for more effective leadership. I think it's just going to continue to grow and expand. And that's all I have to say about that right now.
All right. Well, I think that is a oh, Phyllis, yeah.
I was just going to piggyback off of something Renee said. And right now, I think a lot of people still think of coaching as executive coaching. Mm-hmm. And I hope in the next 10 years, and I'm starting to see it now, is that coaching will be pushed throughout the organizations, even if you don't have a team under you, but just coaching to the masses and to all of the employees. And I hope that that's a trend, and I'm starting to see some of that.
So we have a poll real quick, and I know we are coming really close up. Catherine's going to put a quick poll up that gets to that point. Phyllis, thank you for making that point. And that is, what is the prevalence of coaching in professional development on a scale of 1 to 10? How important is it? On a scale of 1 to 10, how accessible is it? And if it is not accessible, why? So we'll give just a couple more seconds for people to submit that, and we will collect that information. And for those of you that have time to stay on, once we close, we will show you the results of that poll. So I'm going to go ahead and give some final notes, because I know some people have to jump off at 1 o'clock. So to witness, we have coaching demonstration coming up on June 4th. If you want to witness a live coaching demonstration, Tim Link, one of our master certified coaches, will be demonstrating a live coaching session focused on an organizational topic or outcome that one of his clients presents. Also, we would love to get your feedback on this. Our closing code word is coaching. Catherine's going to put our feedback survey in the chat box now, a link to that. So please do fill that out. Even if you're not wanting a CCEU for this, we would still love your feedback on this program. And all of our events are on our website at icfheartland.org. We also have plenty of other International Coaching Week events and activities for you to participate in, and Catherine will put the link to that guide in the chat box as well. So you should all have those links. I want to thank Renee and Marie and Phyllis and Rich for joining us, and all of the dialogue and input. Terry says, would it be possible to have the times noted as CST? All times in our on our website. We are located in Kansas, so that is Central Time, Central Daylight Time right now. So yes, we will try to get that information on all of our material going forward. So if anyone wants to stay on, Catherine has put the results of that poll up. And so it looks like on a scale of 1 to 10, 77% say that coaching is important for growth and development within an organization, but only 52% have access to it. And I'm generalizing these numbers here. The primary barrier to professional coaching is that the company doesn't provide it. So, obviously we can see based on those numbers that we need more organizational leaders to engage in and invest in professional coaching, both for their leaders, for the entirety of their organization. Renee showed us some very strong reasons to do that. The return on investment has been shown and demonstrated. So if you are a leader or know a leader, reach out, and I'm sure any of our panelists would be happy to talk with you or with them about how they can introduce that into their organizations. So with that, I will say goodbye and have a wonderful rest of the week and the rest of the day. I didn't write the first code word, so the code words are celebrate coaching. Bye-bye, everyone.